I'm Anthony Bachman from All Things Good and Nerdy, a geeky podcast part of the GonnaGeek Network, just like the show you're checking out now. Shows on the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other fantastic geeky shows at GonnaGeekNetwork.com.
Hi, I'm Meredith Finch, and you're listening to Capes on the Couch.
Capes on the Couch podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Dr. Issues is a psychiatrist, but he is not your psychiatrist and does not have knowledge of your individual situation. For any personal mental health concerns, please consult your own healthcare providers. For medical emergencies, please call 911 or the designated number in your area immediately. Remember that you are not alone and help is out there.
Hey everyone, Anthony here with our penultimate episode of the season. This is our Baccano panel, recorded live at Shenanicon 2024 in Parsippany, New Jersey. I want to give a special thank you to everybody who attended. We are definitely going to be submitting an application to come back next year, and we're also working on applying for a panel at Derpicon, which is run by the same company. So fingers crossed we get that one. Doc and I have been talking about wanting to do Derpicon for a couple of years, and inevitably we kind of forget that it exists, and then we remember about a week before it happens, which is obviously too late for panel applications. But we're on top of it this year. I promise you that. So we will be submitting. It's just a question of what we're going to do. We've got some ideas. Anywho, this episode, the Baccano panel, is nonstop the entire time because we only had about 45 minutes to make the presentation, and Baccano has so many characters to cover. We wanted to squeeze in as many we could, so it's just boom, boom, boom. So I know we talk about the pictures of the characters in the presentation. That's because it was PowerPoint. It was just pictures of the characters from the title sequence with their name. So you're not missing anything just by listening to the episode. In the meantime, we've got one more episode after this, which is actually another panel presentation that I recently recorded. And then we're going to be taking our summer hiatus. I know we've been talking about an episode on Storm, but unfortunately we just have not been able to schedule that one as of yet. So we are going to hold off on Aurora until we return in September, which is going to time a little better with the release of her upcoming solo series anyway. So it kind of just works out in our favor. In the meantime, stay tuned to our social media pages, our website, capesonthecouch.com. We are on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Threads at Capes on the Couch. And hopefully during the hiatus, I will devote some time to coming up with some video content and other stuff. And I know I say that constantly because it is something that I really want to do. It's just a matter of finding time and energy, which unfortunately, neither of those have been on my side as of late, but we make time for you as best as we can. So without further ado, this is our Baccano episode from Shenanicon. Enjoy, and we will see you soon. All right, well, hello and welcome to Capes on the Couch presents Baccano here at Shenanicon 2024. My name is Anthony Sitko. Thank you so much for coming on out. And I'm joined as always by my wonderful co-host, Doc Issues.
Hello, everybody. It's glad to be here. Always when we get the opportunity to interact with people in person rather than all of the ways we usually do this, which is over the internet. That's right. We don't even get to see each other all the time.
This is very true for one reason or another. And as we're talking over this fantastic anime theme, Guns N' Roses. I don't remember Axel writing this one, but just for the sake of time, we'll move on from that one. So just a little bit of background on who we are. So again, my name is Anthony Sitko. I am a lifelong comic book aficionado. I do work as an attorney, and I am Doc's brother, best friend, hetero life mate, all around number one compadre. Yes, I do have the Captain America shield tattooed on my shoulder blade, and I can give you an impromptu 30-minute TED Talk on Moon Knight, for better or worse. I don't know what that says about me, but probably not all good things.
Yeah, and I think you're cutting yourself a little short there. I'm pretty sure it'll be longer than 30 minutes. Anyway, I'm Dr. Issues. I do have a regular name, but this is my favorite pseudonym. I'm a board-certified psychiatrist, currently practicing as a medical director and chair of a psychiatric hospital, so I'm seeing people at their most difficult times in life. I also happen to love comic books. I love anime, and as Anthony already said, he is my brother. And the one thing that you need to know about me is the same reason why we haven't done an episode on Superman. It's because Superman is the man, and I will hear nothing else about it. I'll gladly talk to you, but I'll let you know I will not have you besmirch his name.
Certainly not going to get that from me, and you know, we've talked to some Superman writers on our show. So just to give you, again, a little bit of a background on the show, we're a podcast, and we cover the mental health and psychiatric issues of comic book characters, ranging from standard Western comics. We've also done some anime and manga. This is actually our third panel presentation that we've done at a convention. Previously, we did Vash the Stampede from Trigun, and we did Spike Spiegel from Cowboy Bebop. So this is our third one. And, you know, when Doc and I were applying for this, we basically said, you know, I kind of turned to Doc, as I always do on these types of things, and I said, okay, give me an anime that we should do. And you, I don't know where you found Baccano.
Well, see, that's the thing. To be blunt, we kind of looked at a list, and Baccano was one of those where I always wanted to watch it, and I never had. So this was a great opportunity. I'm like, let's be selfish. Let's just do this for our own sake.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. And the cool thing about doing these panels and doing these presentations is that we do get to watch things, or at least I get to watch things that I've never seen before. Again, I come from a little bit more of a Western slant with my media preferences, so for Doc to expose me to some anime and manga has just been really cool to see things that I probably otherwise wouldn't have had the opportunity to watch or read were it not for him. So if you're here, there's a chance you probably know about Baccano, but in case you don't, I will just give you a little bit of an overview. So originally it was a light novel manga series by Ryogo Narita, started back in 2003, so over 20 years ago, and it really hurts me to say that was over 20 years ago, because it seems like it was, you know, just a couple of years ago. God, I'm old. And it was adapted to a much abridged anime in 2007. 13 episodes plus 3 OVAs, so you get 16 in total. So the real 10,000-foot view gist of it is that a group of people with very loosely connected backgrounds are part of a magical seance that gives access to an elixir that grants eternal life, and this is all set in 1930s New York during Prohibition. So that is kind of the backdrop against which all of these actions and these things happen.
Yeah, it's incredibly fun. I mean, if you're familiar with any mafioso story, picture that, except a lot of the characters, except for very extreme circumstances, can't really die.
Yeah, and we'll get into that in a little bit shortly. So the story, at least for the anime, and we're going to be largely focusing on the anime version of the story. The story is told across many different time periods overall, and is presented in a non-linear fashion over several years. So the anime focuses on 3 stories in 1930, 1931, and 1932. And it really is told non-linearly, so you have all this stuff happening that jumps around, and then by the end of the series, it all begins to tie together. And there's things that happen throughout the episodes where, if you're really watching carefully and you're staying on top of your game, you know what's happening when, and you get to see how things interact and how things basically play out over time. So, like I said, it was very cool just to see how it's all laid out. And I'd be very curious to now go back and read the novels, which jump across far more time periods than even
much
that.
Longer.
Yeah, much longer, and it's much more engaged and interactive. So if I have the time, and I think I read recently that it wasn't that long ago that the English versions were finally brought to the U.S., that it for whatever reason they weren't able to translate because of rights or whatever, the light novels. So I will see if I can get my hands on them. But in any case, we are going to get started. So the way we normally do our episodes is each episode of our podcast is an hour, give or take, and it focuses on one particular character, and we give kind of a background on that character, and then we discuss 3 issues that particular character has, and then we discuss treatment options for them in universe. We always start with in universe. How would Doc handle this particular character? And when we say in universe, we mean, you know, in that world in which they exist. So if they're a magical user, if they have superpowers, whatever the case may be, and Doc will have access in treatment to all of the tools at his disposal that he would if he were a human in that universe. And then we take it to the real world and we talk out of universe, and that is, what would a real person with these various issues, neuroses, disorders, how would they be treated and how would Doc treat them? And it gives us an opportunity to destigmatize some of the discussions that people have around mental health and some of the various topics. And then we role play a little treatment session at the end, and it gives us a chance to have some fun and do some voice acting. Sometimes they're really funny, sometimes they're serious, sometimes we cry. So it all kind of depends on the character. Having said all of that, Baccano is an interesting series because there really is no main character. There's a couple arguments you could make for certain characters more so than others, at least with respect to the anime. But certainly in the manga, it's very spread out. The story is decentralized, and everybody's actions have an impact and effect on everyone else. And so when we were coming up with this presentation, we said, well, the show can't pick a main character, so we're not even going to try. So instead of picking one character and doing a deep dive on them, we're going to give a summary and an overview on each of the characters and just kind of, go from there. So we're going to start with Czeslaw Meyer, the poor unfortunate 10-year-old, the immortal 10-year-old.
10 years old, 110 years old, 210 years old. Who's counting? Well,
stuck in the body of a 10-year-old boy, I'll say that. Chez, unfortunately, has been through a lot. And, with all apologies and spoilers for a 20-something-year-old series and an anime, he has been tortured repeatedly over centuries because one of the other characters wants to study the effect that this elixir has on these immortals, and he really wants to see just how immortal are you. And so Chez, as a result of this, and by the way, again, totally understandable and justifiable, he is tortured and distrusting of anyone and everyone, especially immortals, and that carries with it a lot of issues themselves.
Trauma. That's what it all is. The idea that you have a negative event and therefore all of your thoughts, emotions, and reactions, behaviors can all be influenced just by what someone has done. It can be a one-time event. That's not the case with Chez. No. This was, at least you get the image of what was going on. This was a progressive timeline. This was happening, I don't know, months, years, who knows? And from that perspective, Chez escapes, by doing some really horrific things himself, but my goodness, when someone experiences this, it's one thing to say that you have to process it for the rest of your life. That's true. Except now you have to deal with the exact same category of people that were traumatizing you to begin with, and you're never going to escape that. That's a level of adaptation that nobody really should have to endure. I'm not claiming that that's appropriate or fair or anything of the sort, but it's great, and it's telling that Chez does come up with some mechanisms to cope with it. The first is detachment while it was happening, like literally just focused inward, not even thinking in the moment of what was going on. Then after that, it was actual true fight or flight, in this case both. And then from there, the idea of avoiding circumstances that would put him in that situation again, true avoidance behavior. But then the idea that there are a couple other characters that he encounters where he thinks, okay, I'm either going to endure this again, in which case I have to strike before they strike me, or I can actually eliminate it and I can find a way to just end my suffering, which is unfortunately what some people with trauma decide to do, thinking that life isn't worth it and just thinking, well, I might as well just accept my fate, becoming very nihilistic. Thankfully, there are some very positive lights to this, and for anybody that has had experience with trauma, first of all, you didn't deserve it. I'll say that as always, and also remind people you are always worthy as a human being of dignity and respect, even if people are trying to take it from you, even if people don't quote-unquote give it to you, it's always there, and it's nice to have someone to remind you of that. And I will say, thankfully, it's not a character that we cover, during this episode, but Chez really does get that from some people, and it's nice to see.
Yeah, and at the end, again, spoilers for the anime, but he spends the overwhelming majority of the anime, he wants to meet Misa, who's another member of the Immortals, and he's looking forward to meeting Misa because he wants to absorb him. And that's, again, we didn't really touch on this, but the only real way that these Immortals can die is by being absorbed through the right hand of another one of the Immortals, basically basically put their right hand on your head and they think about eating you, and they literally suck you into their body, and that person then absorbs all of your memories, everything that you experienced throughout your time, and again, in the case of these immortals, is many, many centuries. And so when he finally does meet Misa at the end, he is so ready for Misa to absorb him. And he's tortured over this, and Misa is reaching out, and he's thinking, he's like, he's going to absorb me, it's going to happen. And Misa just kind of gently touches him with his left hand, and he's like, no, he's going to do it. He's going to, and he breaks down sobbing, and he hugs Misa and says, I missed you. Because he was so traumatized over the fear that Misa was going to absorb him that he had to do it first. He's like, I have to strike before you get me. And the fact that Misa didn't, he was not prepared for that level of kindness and empathy from a fellow immortal. And just, I cried watching the episode because it was so heartbreaking to see, again, he's in the body of a 10-year-old child.
Yeah.
And you can imagine that for all of the stuff that he's endured over centuries, he is still at heart a 10-year-old child, and he's going to react like a 10-year-old child does.
Yeah. Well, the best part about that is, and it's true forget the anime, in real life, the best example that you can be for someone is to be kind when they don't expect it. That is one of the best things you could do. I'm saying this as a doctor. That's the best prescription you can give someone. Be kind when someone doesn't expect it, and you're doing a great service to them.
And especially when they don't think that they deserve it.
Yeah.
That's the other big part of it, too. So we're going to jump from one of the most sympathetic characters to one of my personal favorites.
Oh, boy.
Thank you. You. The star is here. That is literally what he says when he enters a room. And Lad Russo is, he is a psychopathic manchild with a very unique moral code.
Moral code. I mean, that implies that we should say there's morals to it. I know what you're getting at. I understand the definition of moral code. If your main focus, if the number one thing on your mind is killing other people, I think you already destroyed it. That's just my take on it, but I kind of see where it comes from. Go ahead.
The reason why I say that is because he constantly tells his girlfriend Lua, he doesn't say I love you, he says I'll kill you last. That is as close as Lad Russo ever gets to an I love you, is I'll kill you last. And the other reason why I bring up the moral code is Lad doesn't kill indiscriminately, but there are two groups of people for which Lad will kill just instantaneously. It's if you think you can't die, and the other one just went right out of my head. Like, I literally had it lined up. If you think you can't die, and basically if you're arrogant about it.
Yeah.
And one of the other characters that we reference, that we'll get to in a little bit, happens to meet both of those descriptions.
Yeah.
But Lad doesn't. I mean, he doesn't go after Isaac, mostly because that would be like killing a puppy.
Yeah, it's okay. So a part of this also has to do with the spectacle of it. It's not just that he kills. He needs to put on a show when he kills. He and his henchmen all wear white. They are basically hijacking a train. They're wearing white. Why? Because Lad thinks it goes well when blood splatters.
It makes the blood really pop. It's a good accent on the white suit.
On one hand, I'll give a compliment to say, if you know yourself well enough that even the negative sides you're willing to embrace, all right, I can see something good about that. Not when it's at the detriment of everybody else, though. Not when it's like all of society is going to be destroyed because you're just killing people for the fun of it.
Yeah, he's a mafia hitman that they keep very loosely under control because they know that they really can't. But they're like, you're going to do your thing. As long as you don't hurt our people, we'll kind of look the other way. And as long as it doesn't make trouble for the rest of the family.
So there is one thing that I will say. He does learn the concept of humility. I'm not saying he's humbled. There's a huge difference there. He is still an incredibly arrogant jerk to the very end, but he at least learns that he is not the number one person in every conversation. He gets taken down a peg, and his reaction to it, the outright rage, the indignant feeling about it, he's harmed, he's hurt, something that he actually didn't think was going to happen. And that idea, you want to talk about unique moral code, that's unique moral injury.
Yes.
That is what happens. And once again, I'm actually going to zoom out a little bit, because I do know a bit about the manga, I can't believe I'm saying this, he actually does get a little humble. He really does start to appreciate the idea that not everybody is worth killing. So there is some adaptation over time based on those types of experiences.
Yeah, but just again from a charisma perspective, he just is so compelling. He just draws you in every time he's on screen. Every time he's the story is focused on Lad,
definitely
and particularly
a scene stealer. Yeah.
He absolutely is, and that's why that's why I say he's one of my favorite characters in the anime, just because he's so over the top. And his voice actor Brian Massey does an amazing job. I watched the dub on this, and I know that's sacrilegious depending on who you ask, but the dub on this is top notch.
Yeah. Now I want you to get to the next character, because I'm going to say something that you may not agree with.
Okay.
Because now we're talking about the main character of Baccano.
The closest you could say that there is a main character to Baccano, yes, is Firo Prochainezo. Side note, as an Italian, I know no one who's with the last name Prochainezo. Firo is the cutest, politest mob boss you'll ever meet, and that definitely gets under his skin to a large extent, because he's just this very, pretty boy. I think the Japanese is a Bishonen. I may not be pronouncing that correctly, but yeah, this pretty boy that he gets mistaken for a woman on occasion, and he's like, come on, I'm trying here, but you're not giving me the respect I think I deserve.
Okay, and here's where the main character thing wasn't the part I think you would disagree with me on. You're saying the things that he wants people to think about him. He actually comes across pretty badass from the start. He was not always this mafioso that got the job done. He felt he needed to prove himself. But the best way for him to do that was to be so under the radar, so nonchalant, this aw-shucks demeanor, that when people did try and approach him, and this is before the elixir, this is before immortality, he basically said, step to me, F around and find out. And from that perspective, I appreciate that, because to be honest, that's how I walk through life a lot of times. I don't want people to know that I have certain things that I'm trained in or whatever, or what I know and all this other stuff, because I want people to be curious about me. I mean, if we want to go Ted Lasso on this, I'd rather people be curious about me than make instant judgments about me. And if you do make a judgment about me, I want to make sure that it's as wrong as possible. So from that perspective, Firo is amazing. I think the idea that you can take what you know to be true about yourself and find a way to put it in a way that's unassuming, that doesn't discriminate, that doesn't preclude anyone from becoming warm and introductory to you, so that you can actually feel a part of the group to the point that you get invited to certain very exclusive lists. That's what he did. He maxed himself to the point of being a boss. And that is incredibly impressive to me.
Yeah, he's a very cool character. Again, I was just more talking about the very early stages of Firo, and just the dealing with all of the issues that he goes through, and some of the interactions that he has where he's, to your point, assumed to be a certain way based on his looks, and then he has to go out of his way. And yes, more to your personal point, I am also very much of the I don't want you to make judgments about me, and my problem is that I will cut my nose off to spite my own face. Even if your guess is correct, I will act opposite. I will be defiant just to go, no, screw you. And it's not healthy, and it's one of the things I talk to my therapist about. But we're not here about me. We are here talking about the Baccano characters.
We're here to talk about whatever we want to talk about. You don't have to worry about it, man. It's all good.
Yeah, that's fair. So next we're going to talk about, I got to say, just straight up, one of the most unfortunately named characters, I think, in all of anime or culture that I've ever seen, Jacuzzi Splot. I know Japan likes to take, they think they understand English sometimes, and they come up with these names, and then you get Jacuzzi Splot. I don't know where, man. How?
Well,
why?
I don't know. I mean, it sounds like, no matter what, he's always going to be involved in a happy ending. Sorry, I just happen to have a lot of puns in me. I apologize. That was definitely off kilter. I'm not sorry because I said it, but anyway.
So Jacuzzi is another fascinating character because, as I said in the kind of the line here, Jacuzzi will kick your ass right after he finishes crying about it.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll actually go through my thought process as I was watching the episodes as they go by. First, I was thinking, wow, he's clearly an adult, but a young adult, and this is significant emotional dysregulation. I mean, even things that most people would consider to be insignificant would make him cry. And I'm like, wow, what kind of events had to happen in his life that this is the way he reacts to everything? It's a defense mechanism because no different at any age. When you cry, you bring attention to say, I need something. I am not well. And that's not necessarily fair because it can be cathartic. And that is where I had made a judgment and I was wrong. Jacuzzi was using it as pretty much the most efficient level of catharsis I had ever seen, because when stuff hits the fan, he actually starts to take charge in a way that first was a little off-putting because it's like, whoa, where was this? Were you hiding this the whole time? No, he was building up to it. He wanted to make sure that he could process all of his intense emotions in a way that when something serious was happening and he had to act, he could act without letting intense emotion get in the way. So he became incredibly calm. He became incredibly calculated, and he definitely put some hurt on people. So, seeing that, I realized, you know what? I think that is useful. I think that there is a time where it's okay to go ahead and have your ball session, have your crying, have your anger, whatever. Everybody, or if you haven't heard of them, if you know what a break room is, I'm not talking about the lounge area where you work. I'm talking about a destruction room. Hey, those things exist for a reason, okay? I think it can be good, provided that you process whatever is behind it in a healthy way with someone that can guide you through, because I've had some patients actually tell me their experience and it actually exacerbated the situation later because they had released a lot of energy and aggression, but now they didn't know how to tone it back down when they needed to. So Jacuzzi has that on lock.
Yes, he absolutely does. And I thought it was so beautiful how he was describing to Nice, and it was kind of a flashback, that we see right before the big confrontation that he has on the train, where he says, I cry all the time to get the tears out so that when I need to, they're not there, to that point. That is very much a let's get dangerous moment. Like, I'm going to equate him to Darkwing Duck, and some of y'all may laugh, but for those of you that are familiar with the 90s cartoon, Darkwing Duck was kind of a joke. Drake Mallard was this joke character, but when he said, let's get dangerous, he flipped a switch and he became super effective, and he was not a joke at that point. Jacuzzi takes that to another level because he's super crying all the time, whatever, and then you find out he knocked over 18 speakeasies in one night by himself? What? And so when he has that moment where he thinks that Nice is in trouble, when he thinks that his friends are seriously going to die because of the rail tracer, he gets angry, but it's that tranquil fury, and that is A, badass to watch, and B, just super cool from a character development standpoint, to your point, that he got it all out of the way so that when the time comes, he's ready to deliver.
The thing I learned is emotions are information. Nothing more, nothing less. Use it however you see fit, and recognize that there are consequences to how you use it.
Amen to that. So the next character is the only character in the presentation who is not going to get the title treatment, largely because he's not included in the titles.
That's right. He wasn't in a title sequence, but you see him. He is in there.
Oh, he's in there. He's just not named, and that would be Claire Stanfield, a.k.a. the Rail Tracer.
A.k.a. the frickin' guy that literally has blood on him all the time because it's what he does for fun.
Yeah. Claire has, we talked about it with Lad. You want to talk about a unique moral code? Claire is solipsism to its logical
All right.
conclusion?
We've gotten bad critiques about this before. So if you're going to use a word like that, you're going to have to define it.
Solipsism is the idea that essentially nothing exists outside of my ability to understand and interpret it.
That's right. Your mind is the only reality. And he actually says this.
Yeah, it's cogito ergo sum. However, again, I'm butchering the Latin, but it's I think, therefore I am. But that if I don't think of it, it doesn't exist.
Yep. So in this case, maybe he was just jealous because so many characters had this immortality. He basically says, well, I just don't think I can die because I do whatever I want and I seem to continue to live no matter what happens. And in a strange way, because he's incredibly skilled as a fighter and he's shown that he is willing to take on anyone, and he does very well, then I guess he just keeps proving his own point. I have a huge issue with this, mainly because I feel like a lot of people, especially in modern society with social media, try and do this with themselves, where they try and generate what they consider to be lasting relationships with people despite never having any actual real interaction. We're actually at risk of doing this to people, by the way. When we do a podcast, we talk in a way to people that they think they're there with us. And sometimes people develop that. It's been way before podcasts. It's happened with television, happened with radio.
Parasocial relationships.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm not saying that that's wrong in and of itself. I'm saying that if you're not aware of it and you don't, take charge of it, then it goes from having fun at a place like this, which is amazing. I've seen some awesome cosplays here. It's great to see. As long as you're doing it with other people, as long as you're willing to engage. If you're not doing that, you're going down a very dangerous path. It actually leads to intense isolation, and that is a big problem.
Yeah, if you're out at a con and you're dressed as a character from Inuyasha, that's great. You're part of the contest. You're out here. You're getting your pictures taken. If you're in your house just living your life and you're dressed as a character from Inuyasha, that might be a bit of an issue. If you're just going about your daily existence thinking like, today I'm going to dress like this character, or today I'm going to dress like that character, that might speak to some deeper-seated issues. And again, the parasocial relationships, we see that with fandoms, that they think that fans of particular celebrities or musicians or whatever, they think that they understand the person because they follow them on social media or because they listen to the music, and they think that they understand the person and that they think, this person is my friend. That's not necessarily the case. And Claire kind of takes the whole notion of relationships in general and just completely turns it on its head.
He literally treats the world as if it's a one-player game and everyone is an NPC.
Yep. I mean, he says that. He says it numerous times on the train that, basically that he is above God, that there is no God, that he created this world and everything in it. So since he's alive, he must be the God, right? I mean, that totally tracks. Yeah. And again, to your point, in a very twisted, logical way, it does, like, you can understand. It's like troll logic. Like, you can kind of see where you get from A to B, but you have to make so many assumptions and presuppositions and disregard so many other things that it renders the ultimate, final assessment kind of moot. But you're like, I see where you got it, but no.
Exactly. Just end on that. No.
just no. So the next character, Szilard Quates, the man who's kind of largely responsible for so much of this elixir getting out, or indirectly, I should say, and the man whose sole driving force is knowledge and power. And so our line for this is, what does he want? Yes.
Yeah, from absorbing probably way more immortals than anybody else has, to controlling everything within the local town that he lives in, to developing the ability to create pretty much golems that can do his bidding. All of it.
Yeah, homunculi that he controls, and he said, I can kill you with a thought. You're only here to do my bidding. And that's, where Rachel, right? No, not Rachel. Ennis. So, there's like 11 characters. I forget some of the names. Yes, Ennis.
It's the idea of knowledge for knowledge's sake. We've seen this in so many tropes. We saw it with Brainiac. I know some of you may not have heard it, but I referenced, I'll never talk ill of Superman, but I will talk ill of those characters. The idea that you have to be the source of everything. You have to be all-seeing, all-knowing. You basically are trying to create God in your own image. And I think everybody could see why that's problematic, but I don't think what's nearly as clear is just how detached that can make him, because it's human nature to want to have control over as many things in your life as possible, because that allows you to have comfort, okay? But there's, as we've talked about many times with our episodes, there's the sphere of concern, there's the sphere of control, there's the sphere of influence. Most people get the ratios really, really wrong. Your sphere of control is minuscule. Your sphere of influence, hopefully, is pretty vast. And your sphere of concern is way bigger than it ever should be. Because there are a lot of things in life that we do think about, care about, and want to know more about. And yet, we somehow flip it around and say, that is now part of my sphere of control. And if I'm not controlling it, that either says there's something wrong with me or there's something wrong with everybody else, which clearly is going to create conflicts. Not good. Instead, if you want to create a compromise, because I'm not trying to say to people, don't expand your sphere of control, because then that becomes almost nihilistic. Like, well, then what's the point? I can't control anything. So my point is, you can control very little. You can influence a lot more than you think, and your concern can be tailored so that your influence matches up. When you hit that sweet spot, that's where contentment lies, in my opinion. That's where satisfaction lies, in my opinion. And if for whatever reason you feel like all of these things are out of whack, that's where you need to find more purpose. You need to find something that is starting to bring those other things into alignment. This guy didn't do that. He didn't even try. He basically said, oh, sphere of control, that's everything. He didn't think of the other stuff. He just said, that's everything.
And it's largely borne out because, again, he has the ability to absorb the other immortals. And as we'd said, when you absorb the immortal, you absorb all of their memories. You absorb everything about their life. And so his thought process is, I'm going to let everybody else kind of go out and live their lives, and then I'm just going to absorb everything. And we did a very early episode on Jamie Madrox.
Yep.
Jamie Madrox at one point, multiple man in the comics, sent out multiple versions of himself to go out and live lives and do all kinds of things and pick up, umpteen skills, and then reabsorb them back into himself so that he could learn all of these skills and traits. Seiler's trying to do that with people, not clones of himself, with people. That's where the issue. That's where a lot of the conflict comes from. And again, to your point, is trying to control everything. And you were talking about learning how to get the ratio better between influence and control and concern and stuff. And to that, as I say all the time, take my name out of your damn mouth, because you're making me feel seen here. Stop talking about me. I'm sitting right here.
That's the point. You're sitting right here, so I can talk about you as much as I want. This is great. We usually do this, like I said, we do this usually online. We never see each other in person, or very rarely, so I get to actually do this.
Yeah.
This is wonderful.
Yes.
This is great. I appreciate you, buddy. I really do.
Yeah,
I really do.
I know. For those, if you're listening, or for those that aren't, we've been best friends for 25 years. Best men at each other's weddings, godfather to the kids, everything. So to say that, he and I are close is a bit of an understatement. So that's going to essentially wrap it up here for the real big presentation, because again, there's so many characters in Baccano that we couldn't go in depth on all of them. I would have loved to have done a segment on Isaac and Miria, but honestly, it would have just been more fun than anything, because those two were so spacey and flighty that it would have just been just talking about how do you go through all of this and not understand anything?
Well, when you actually are enjoying the moments as they happen, you don't have to know about anything else.
Yeah, but when you live in the moment so long that it's 7 years later and you go, say, Miria, have we aged? No, they haven't.
Yeah.
Not in 70 years.
Yep.
That, could be a bit of an issue.
Good point.
So I guess we're, since we still have a little bit of time left in the presentation, we got some people here. Does anybody have any Q&A for us about any of the characters? Either any of the characters that we've discussed, or, maybe if you just have a question about somebody that we didn't reference in the presentation, kind of now is the time. You don't have to, but we're here.
I wasn't here for part of the presentation. What did you guys say about Isaac and Miria? Because I love them, and like you mentioned, they're spacey. The fact that they didn't realize those many years passed, and they're just like, we age? No, it's whatever.
Yeah, and that's the thing. So we didn't do a specific topic for them because I know that they tie things together. They're a great introduction to everything, every episode. It was wonderful. The thing I'll say about them is, on one hand, it's fantastic to live in the moment because that means every experience you have is real. It has more intensity to it. You get to feel things better than you have before. The downside to that, though, is it makes planning really, really tough. And I know they had their heists. I know they had the things that they were doing, but there's a reason why they never quite worked out the way that they really should have, and that's part of it. The idea that they could be incredibly short-sighted about stuff. So that's the downside to that. You know, it's nice to be whimsical. It's nice to have that, but at the same time, you could think the same thing though with relationships. Like, how about having kids? How about having other things? Like, just certain things where it's like, you know, they would never get that because they don't even give themselves a chance.
Yeah, there's no thought process behind it. It's just whatever is directly in front of them, that's what they're dealing with. And they get these fleeting ideas, and there's no impulse control. So for Isaac and Mary, they're definitely comedy relief. They're comic relief for the series. And yes, they don't have a ton of depth themselves, but through their interactions, you get to see the depth in other characters. But there's not a lot there for us to discuss within Isaac and Mary themselves. So that's why, you know, I made a couple social media posts like, you know, say Isaac, what's that, Mary, my dear? You know, like in that voice of just like talking about that whole, you know, I'm just going to go off on a tangent here and talk about whatever, because for the characters, it makes sense. But from a psychological standpoint, there's not a whole lot of meat on that bone, which is fine. Not every bone is going to have a ton of meat on it, but this is, you know, a thin sliver of protein, and then it's just...
Oh, you mean like Lad's arm?
Yeah. Ooh.
Sorry.
Anybody else? Questions? Comments? All right. So thanks everybody for coming on out. So again, we are Capes on the Couch. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Threads at Capes on the Couch. Our website and information is on the page here. We've got a website, Capes on the Couch. Like I said, we come out with episodes pretty much every 2 weeks. We typically drop them on Wednesdays. The timing here is actually kind of funny because this episode, we're recording it, we're going to release it as an episode, but then we're going to be going on hiatus during July and August just for summer break. It's hard for Doc and I to get together and coordinate things, but we'll be back in September with brand new episodes. If you go back and you listen to some of our episodes and you like what you hear, we have a Patreon. You can subscribe and unlock early access, additional content, uncensored material, etc. And so that's that. So, and then if anybody, you know, is here in the area, I will be at a Comic-Con in Jersey City next week at the Bethune Center this coming Saturday. I'm going to be giving a panel discussion with one of the directors of the Bethune Center. We're going to be talking about mental health in minority communities, and I realize it's kind of somewhat ironic for a white guy to talk about mental health in a minority community, but since Doc unfortunately is not available and it's a Black Comic-Con, you know, so I'll be kind of going in his place.
I was going to say, I'm giving you credit.
I appreciate it. So thank you very much. Appreciate it. I hope everybody has a great time at the con, and we've got some buttons here over next to the projector, so take care everybody, and thanks for coming out.
Peace.
Capes on the Couch podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Dr. Issues is a psychiatrist, but he is not your psychiatrist and does not have knowledge of your individual situation. For any personal mental health concerns, please consult your own healthcare providers. For medical emergencies, please call 911 or the designated number in your area immediately. Remember that you are not alone and help is out there.